Oh, jeez, I'm just a child. No, Ronnie put it. Okay, I like it. I can get used to it, Ronnie. It's new, but I think I'll get used to it.
Yeah, it's a new song. Anybody that didn't know, YouTube, it's like, oh, you can't have this song. And I'm like, I've had it in like almost 20 something videos, but or whatever.
Yeah,
But
kind of
welcome back,
unsolved
everybody,
mysteries.
to another
Not too bad.
episode, right? But welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Comics Della Morte, episode 93. And we have a special guest, a new guest, Marjean Holden, actress, stunt woman, martial artist. You have seen her in many movies growing, depending on when you were born, like Mortal Kombat, Annihilation, and
Why you gotta say it like that,
TV
Ronnie?
shows like TV shows. I'm remembering on the top of my head everything. Tales from the Crypt, The Pit, which we'll definitely get into that.
Yeah.
And you've been in some John Carpenter's movies, which was awesome because we got to ask you about that. And I definitely remembered you from the BeastMaster TV show because I'm a big BeastMaster fan. Way before the movies even, before the show came out, I was a fan of the movies.
A fan of the movie, yeah.
Totally, yep. Me too.
Which you worked with that actor in Sweet Justice.
Yep. Mark Singer, yeah, I worked with him in Sweet Justice and in BeastMaster. So nothing like having the original BeastMaster on the series, the spinoff.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Super cool.
Sweet. So, I'm Ronnie Gunter, Crimson Owl Comics, Jason Alexander, Fogbreaker Studios. So pretty much before we get into the horror movies and stuff, you want to tell a little bit about people, like what made you want to go into movies, being a stunt woman and martial arts and all that?
Well, okay, let's see. Where do I start? It started at the very beginning. Like I was in 4th grade and I decided like I produced, directed, and starred in my first little play. And I was like,
very cool.
Went home and I was like, that's it. I'm going to be an actress. And my mom's like, oh, that's nice. So it was like after I got out of high school and went into college, I studied producing and directing television because I was like not going to go into acting as the fine art because they didn't have a program. So I was in producing and directing television, went to 4 years of college, never graduated. Oh my God, it's really hurt. Yes, Rudy. Yes, it's really. I don't know if the face is bad or good. Is it bad or good? Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
It's good.
It's good. So
it's my brother. It's my little brother.
So. Oh, hi, little brother. How's it going? So I was in college and I met a couple of guys that were doing a short film and they needed like production crew. So I was like, hey, I'll work. I don't even know how I met these guys. Just somebody was just like, hey, these are these guys. They make films and they're doing a short film. And I was like, okay, I'll come on. And it was like the short was called Songs of the Death Quartet or something like that. And I worked on that as a production assistant, just helping them out, just to get some experience. And while we were shooting that little film, they were like, hey, there's a film coming to town that Paramount's doing called Campus Man, and they're looking for crew. So I was like, oh, okay. Didn't think anything of it. Went in, applied for a job, and became the office production assistant on this movie. And did a little bit part, like not saying anything, just in the scene. And after that film, another film was coming to town. And they were like, hey, go work on that film. So I went over, applied for a job on this other film, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yes.
Was the office production assistant on that. Had gotten this modeling gig, so had to leave my production job for a couple of weeks to go do this modeling gig from the makeup artist that I met through Campus Man. And when I came back, the director had been auditioning girls for this small part and said, oh, I didn't like any of the actresses. I know you want to be an actress. Do you want to do this role? And I went, sure. And I was a student speaker speaking on stage in their big finale where they had to do their report to graduate. And I was a student doing a speech on Marie Antoinette. And that was where I got into the Screen Actors Guild Union. That was my first.
That's on being ready instead of having to get ready.
Yes.
Just showing up and
showed up.
That's it.
And that was it. And that director's name was Stephen Herrick, and he went on to do a bunch of other stuff. And
that's so cool.
Keanu was in it. And then when I met a stunt coordinator when I was working on Sweet Justice, the movie Sweet Justice, the stunt coordinator was like, hey, I know you're like this actress and everything, but do you want to come do some stunts? And I was like, well, what do I have to do? Awesome. He's like, yeah, you won't have to do anything, dangerous or anything. You just jump out of the way of cars and whatnot and this and that. And I was like, okay, sure. He gets me an audition or interview with the stunt coordinator that was working on Speed. And the stunt coordinator goes, oh, hey, I've got a black girl that's on the bus, a black lady on the bus, and I need a double for her because they got to have doubles whenever the bus is crashing into stuff or jumping over stuff. We need doubles. So they hired a bunch of stunt people, like 10 of us, to sit on the bus while the bus was doing the crazy stuff. And that was my first stunt gig.
On Speed. How cool.
On Speed. Yep.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, hey, Keanu, how's it going?
Right? Remember me? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with, you've done a lot of movies, non-sci-fi, non-horror, but there was a bunch of movies you have done sci-fi and horror. Like, are you a fan of that genre, or was it I want to get into it?
It's funny because I was never a huge fan of horror films. I didn't like watching them when I was a kid. It's like I saw Jaws in the theater and was like scared to go in a pool for years, and because Jaws came out when I was literally like 12 or 13. So when I saw it in the theater, I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. Didn't like those movies, saw Carrie in the movie theater and thought, this is crazy. Poltergeist, like all of those movies. When I, saw them in the theater. So I was like, yeah, The Exorcist. And I was like, ooh, yeah. Like, no. So I never became a huge fan of actually pursuing horror films.
Yeah.
But a couple came across my path. And I was like, well, hey, if you get an opportunity to work with John Carpenter as a vampire, are you going to say no? No.
I have no idea of anything about acting, but I would not say no to being a vampire in a John Carpenter movie.
Right?
Or whatever else. Like you pick. I'm good.
John Carpenter says, hey, I want to hire you. Okay.
Yep, I'm there. Just tell me where to be. I'll be right there.
Yeah, we're a fan of John's on the show.
Yeah.
And did you get a chance to talk to John at all? Where on the set, or was he really not?
I did.
Was he really not? Yeah.
He was literally the coolest, calmest,
totally
director I've ever worked with.
That's awesome.
In my entire career. I showed up on set and I didn't even I didn't know what he looked like. how do you not know what it looks like? You got to do some research here. And I was like, nah, I'm just going to show up. And oh my God.
Right.
I walk on set as my vampire self, right? And I'm like looking around and he's just kind of chilling, sitting behind the, the camera and just smoking a cigarette, hanging out, super quiet. I'm like, oh, it's John Carpenter. Tried not to have my fangirl moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so cool because the first day we all showed up to shoot the vampire scenes, or at least the ones that we were in, the masters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was the day they decided that the first day we were going to work, we were going to do the scene in the wash. And if you've seen John Carpenter's vampires and you've seen all 7 masters come up out of the ground in the wash, we shot that the very first day any of us worked.
Wow.
So we show up on set and it's like, hey, there are, 7 holes dug in the ground with a bunch of dirt on the side. And they're like, hey, go lay down in those holes and make sure you fit. Like, what? Oh, okay. Lay down, not knowing that in about, I don't know, less than an hour, you're going to be covered from head to toe in dirt. And then you're going to have to come up on this. I was like, okay. And it was literally that. It's even though it's the coolest scene I've ever done in a movie, it was the most terrifying. It was so scary.
I can't even begin to imagine. But
I
don't know, why wouldn't he get you guys at your freshest for that? Like, because that establishes it.
Totally.
And, it's raw to you guys, but it's also you guys at your optimal because you're there and, like, that fresh new excitement. Like, some people just know. Like, some people, it's John Carpenter through and through.
Yep. It was John Carpenter, and it was, it was so fun. Like, that was such a fun shoot because he was absolutely amazing to work with.
Yeah.
And such a great
awesome.
subject to study.
A great cast.
Just watching him and such a great cast. And it's like, wow, this is super cool.
John Carpenter he got it. Like, he knew how to connect. And I remember never understanding how cool They Live was until, like, you realize, like, why is it so cool? Like, why was it this? Because we kind of live there, like in a lot of ways we live there. And you could say that about just about any John Carpenter movie. Like, he knew how to connect with who was supposed to like that movie. And it didn't matter if it was 65 billion people. We speak it enough to make people understand how important John Carpenter was as a creator, period. Yeah. Horror, yes, because that's what we all do. Sci-fi, yes, because that's what we all love. I mean, I grew up on Star Wars. But we all just want good stories. This is what we were talking about before we came on. And John Carpenter knows how to take this story and relate it to that feeling. Yeah. And that's really all we ever want to do when we tell stories. Like, I don't know. I could talk about John Carpenter all day, so I'll put it back in second gear for a second.
Right.
Yeah, but, such an opportunity.
You also were on Ghosts on Mars, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had done vampires, and then when they did Ghosts of Mars, his wife Sandy was like, "Hey, come in, let's make you a crazy psycho. Sharpening your teeth, and you're going to be
that makeup that you had to do."
I'm like, okay. And the makeup was just like, things sticking out of my face and fangs and sharp teeth. And I'm just filing them down and like weird, crazy stuff. And yeah, it was fun. Some cool stuff.
Better than getting buried.
Hold on.
You know what? I wouldn't say it was better than getting buried because
Different.
it was an interesting, you know, it was just interesting. Being a vampire was definitely cooler than being a ghost in Ghost of Mars.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
So
I remember the pit. You know, it was less of a scary story. It was more like martial arts and everything.
yeah.
But I just loved how you and the actors, it's like after a while, I'm like, wait, that's Heidi from Tool Time that she was fighting.
Yeah, Debbie Gunning.
But like, how long did it take you guys to choreograph those fight scenes, or was it her doing it with you, or is it someone else?
No, we actually there were stunt doubles for us, but we did a lot of our own stuff as well because she was super athletic, and I had already been doing stunts and you know and stuff like that. So they were like, okay, we're going to do as much as we can with you, and then they brought in a couple of stunt doubles to do some other shots, some wider shots. But yeah, that was the whole switch, twist, change. The guys were supposed to be in the pit, and the wives were just supposed to be, you know, these catty wives.
Right.
And then the tables get turned, and oh, wait, what is happening here?
So cool.
So fun.
Now, was that your big time where like you had like more dialogue?
Yeah.
Because like you were doing that and stuff where you were like in small roles. Was that like your biggest role at that point?
Let's see, what year was that? Tales from the Crypt was 90. I want to say something like 94 or 95, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Maybe 96.
It had to be around that time.
So it was pre-Mortal Kombat, and it was pre-Crusade. So yeah, that was one of the bigger guest starring roles that I had. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now with Mortal Kombat, like, you know, where you're like, okay, I've seen the first movie, I gotta get in the second movie. Because sometimes people, you know, they want to be in movies like that they could have their kids watch and everything. How fun was it to actually be on the set of Mortal Kombat and like get to hang out with these people from the first movie?
Well, you know what's really funny is I never watched the first one. I was not into Mortal Kombat at all. And when my manager pushed to get me in on, you know, the movie to audition for it, then I started going, oh, let me check out the game. Let me watch a little bit of this. What's happening here? But the stunt coordinator on Mortal Kombat, Jeff Imada, he and I had known each other, and we had wanted to work with each other. So he was like, oh God, I really want to work with you. And then when came time to shoot the movie, it overlapped with something else that he was already committed to. And then so he couldn't do that movie, but then we got to work together on John Carpenter's Vampires. But it was the toughest role that I had ever gotten was Mortal Kombat. I had 7 callbacks for Mortal Kombat.
For Mortal Kombat, you never would guess it.
Yep. I had 7.
Well,
I had my initial call and then 6 callbacks. So 7 auditions.
Like, okay, bank a second one.
It's such an important part of our pop culture. Like everything that touches is important. You know what I mean? Because Street Fighter 2 was it, but Mortal Kombat kind of, it showed how it was the machine version of it. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, Street Fighter 2 was the thing, but now this is what the vehicle that it created can do.
Right. And here we are, like Mortal Kombat 11, 12, whatever they're on.
12 is getting ready to come out, and it still matters. Like, people are still excited about it.
Yeah. So, now, I mean, being on that set, we had such a blast. Say that again, Ronnie.
Like, what did you all have to do to prepare for that role? Like, they had arms CGI. Because I know sometimes they had people like wear a suit with additional arms.
Yeah, so we did both. We did stop motion on some of it, and then they made practical arms for me. They molded them, and so sometimes I had just this. If we were doing like a still shot or something like that, I'd just have the static arms because I had a harness underneath my costume where they hooked into the sides, and that was always really interesting because they were very unfriendly.
I was gonna say, do you have to train like specifically for like apparatus like that? If you know you're gonna wear something extra, do you train differently?
You know, I didn't at that time. You know, I was still fairly young and super athletic and was like,
right,
you know, I'm fine.
But you were fine when you got there, yeah.
But those guys that, you know, are in heavy prosthetics and heavy stuff, you know, yeah, absolutely. They train differently, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I just, because, you know, I had that little skimpy costume on. It wasn't like it was heavy.
Right.
It wasn't heavy. The harness was uncomfortable, but I didn't have a ton to do when those arms were on. So when I was not using the practical arms, I didn't have to have it on because they were going to CGI them in anyways.
You wasn't fighting in them or anything like that.
So I didn't have to actually fight in them. So we had to do all the motion, the stop motion, and the capture all of that after, but I didn't have to, you know, I didn't have to fight in those awful arms.
That's good.
Yeah.
So,
but it was fun every once in a while.
So you had like, you had some big roles in movies, some TV shows, but then BeastMaster came on, you know, and like I said, I watched BeastMaster, the movies, and then growing up, like, oh wow, there's a TV show, and you were like you were a big character in that. You had like 22 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in season 2 and season 3, and
yeah,
I ended up working a lot more than what they anticipated because when I first got the contract, they contracted me for a certain number of days because their contracts work differently down there in Australia. So they're like, okay, we're going to put you on this number of days, and anything beyond that, you know, but this is the guarantee of what we're going to give you. And they ended up having a really good result with the character, and there was a lot of viewership there,
which is always good.
So people liked the character and were like, ooh, Arina, yeah, we like her. So at the end of season 2, the producers came to me and the writer came to me and they were like, so if we keep you as a bad guy, we're gonna have to kill you. And we don't want to kill you because the character's doing really well. So we're gonna have to defect to the good guys. I'm like, okay, whatever we gotta do, we gotta do, right? Keep me in there. Keep me alive. Keep me alive.
Right. Now with Arina, do you get like a lot of Now with Arina, do you get a lot of fans who come up to you for that role more than any else?
Not anymore. I used to.
Not anymore.
But not anymore.
Because most of the people who watched it are old like us now.
Yeah, you know, it's an older crowd, but yeah, the younger generation doesn't, you know, they know Mortal Kombat, but they know the characters from Mortal Kombat. So, hey Pops, how you doing? Hey. Gary says, sorry, I'm late. Well, Gary, you know what?
Gary, what's up, man?
Dude.
Hey, Pops.
I'll not forget that.
Pops.
Welcome anyways. Thank you, Gary, for being here.
But how was it I wasn't on the set of Deep Space Nine. You episode of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did an episode of Deep Space Nine, and it's the Star Trek world was really funny for me because I had been trying for years to get on any sort of Star Trek, show. So I'm like, oh, come on. My manager's like, she'd be a great Klingon. She'd be a great any kind of alien.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Right?
Yep.
And they would never bring me in.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to get on during the Next Generation shows. Yeah,
tried to get on everything. And there was a television series that I did called Jake and the Fat Man.
Oh, I remember Jake and the Fat Man. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, with Joe Penny. And
that was Friday night television before TGI Friday. Before TGIF.
Yeah,
oh my
Jake
gosh.
And the Fat Man.
Yeah.
And when I did that, my brother was working production on it. And the husband and wife team that were the producers, he used to always take my picture into the production office and put it up by his desk, and the producers would always go, "Oh, who's that?" And, "Oh, that's my sister. She's an actress." And they'd go, "Oh, well, we'll bring her in, to read." So they had brought me in to read for a part, and they gave me a part on Jake and the Fat Man. Well, they moved over to Deep Space Nine after their run on Jake and the Fat Man was done. And they were producing, they were executive producers over on Deep Space Nine. And so my manager had submitted me for the role, and they bypassed casting and brought me straight into producers to read. So because they had already worked with me, so they were like, we know that she can handle it. Let's just bring her right in to meet the director. That's director on that was the director that was going to be the director on the pilot of Crusade. So he was like, "Oh, I really like her. Let's hire her." So hires me on Deep Space Nine, and was like, "Oh, this is cool." Had no idea that he was going to be the director on Crusade. So when Crusade came
I was going to say, but this is still a matter of you in a constant state of readiness.
Constant state of readiness. Constant.
Tell me where to show up and
tell me where to be.
That's awesome.
Michael Vihar is his name. And then I showed up for the audition for Crusade for that series. And it was like, the casting directors had like this love-hate relationship with my manager and was like, "Oh no, I don't know if we're going to bring her in." And she pushed really hard, like, "Just bring her in, just bring her in, just bring her in." Well, they bring me in for the first read, and then the producers were like, "Oh, we really like her. Let's bring her back for network." And when they brought me back for network, Mike Vihar, the director from Deep Space Nine, was going to be the director of the pilot episode of Crusade and had a huge influence on who they were going to hire for the main characters for the cast. And he was like, "Yes, of course, let's bring her in. Yeah, of course. I want her to be, Dr. Chambers." So that's how I ended up getting that role. And that was it from there. So it was pretty cool. But yes, always ready. I had the same acting coach for 14 years. Just got to stay ready.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I know you said you're not much of a horror fan, but do you have at least like a movie where you have watched a horror movie that you really enjoy? That you could get into? And it could have been a John Carpenter's movie.
It was. They Live kicked my butt. That was like one of my, I was like, oh my God, this movie's great. Oh, You know,
the thing is the best John Carpenter movie.
Yes,
I gotta say, They Live might be my favorite. It's right there with Prince of Darkness. Yeah,
like it is right there.
Such a good movie.
It's hard to actually say one of them is better than the other. They're totally, kind of different
animals. Right? Yep.
But yeah, I mean, he's one of my favorite directors. So pretty much, if it's a John Carpenter
you could
film,
just
I'm
look
gonna
at the
watch
diversity of his movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna watch. So, but
They Live, Roddy Piper. I'm a huge wrestling kid anyway, so it's got every bit. But also, that story is like A1 fantastic. And when you think about when it came out, it was so far ahead of its time.
Yes.
But, oh yeah.
So far.
But
it's a clinic.
So much
it's
today.
A clinic on storytelling. They Live as a absolute clinic on storytelling.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. So good.
Because sorry, this is the last thing. I'm sorry. The end is so different than the beginning that it's almost like the B-side of a cassette, like to put it in like time period, because it completely goes from like these hidden messages to like jump rooms to other planets.
Yeah.
And it's all like, it's the fourth movie. Like if there was 4 movies in the Apocalypse trilogy, if it was an Apocalypse quartet, it would be the fourth one, because it's the same animal that's trying to get out of Antarctica is the same thing that's trying to broadcast this message and take over the planet.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm done. Sorry,
totally.
No, it's all right, buddy. It's all right.
I'm feeling you though. Yep.
Now, yeah. Now with you've done work with Babylon. Was it Babylon 5 that you done work too, or?
Well, I did one of their standalone movies.
Yes,
before I did Crusade. Yeah, because Babylon 5 had been on for 5 years already, and they were ending, but they were making a series of movies of the week. So I did one of the movies of the week. God, what was it even called? I can't even remember what it was called. But I can't even recall. But it was, they had brought me in to do the navigational officer, and Crusade was shooting after that. So it was like, they were like, well, she played the navigational officer on, in Babylon 5. And they're like, we don't care. Like, we use the same people all the time for different characters.
Right.
Just be her twin sister or something weird. We don't care.
It's sci-fi. Like, how do we fit it in? We'll fit it.
Exactly.
We'll
sci-fi. Totally different universe, totally different world, whatever.
The rules are always different.
Yes.
Yeah. So have you done, so it said on your IBM you have directing. Like, what have you directed? Was it like an episode of a show?
I did a short film called Pheromone. And it was, when was it? 2019? We shot that? Yeah, 2019. And the executive producer on that had been a fan, and he writes comic books and does a lot of stuff and bases a lot of his stories, because he's from the Congo. So
nice.
Yeah, so he bases a lot of his stuff on, the African stories from the Congo. And he grew up in, like, when they left there, they went to Boston. So his whole, like, a lot of his stories were based in Boston, but they always had this sci-fi twist, and they always traveled like through time and through space and all of these different things. And like, oh my gosh, like 20 years ago, he had contacted me when I was at kind of at the height of my acting career. And he had sent me a message and said, hey, I have this script. I really want, you to star in this. And I was like, cool, right on. He's like, yeah, trying to get money, doing that whole thing. Then through the process, him and I just became friends. And we had always kept in touch over the years. And then he was like, hey, you know, like, what's been going on? And I was like, you know, just doing this, that. And he's like, are you still acting? I'm like, not really. I kind of just want to direct. And he goes, great. Let me make that happen. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, let's do a short of, you know, of Pheromone. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So we ended up, you know, doing a short, and we only had one day to shoot. And so I didn't get as much material as I wanted in order to get, like, really get into the juice of it. So I'm like, oh man, if I had more money, I'd just redo this for him. And but I had such a blast. I had so much fun. And the inspiration kind of for that was, you know, I had a conversation with John Carpenter one day and was saying to him, he goes, well, what do you really want to do, Marjeen? And I said, I just really want to direct. And he was like, then do it. And I was like, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay. And he looked, he goes, it's not that hard. I'm like, yeah, says you, John Carpenter. Like, he who has directed so many films. He goes, no, believe me, it really isn't that hard. If you have a good director of photography, you have a good crew, he's like, and you already know filmmaking, you'll be fine. And it really kind of kicked in about a year ago. I shot a trailer, or I shot material for a trailer for a project that at the time my ex-husband now, but my husband at the time, Darren McBee, who played Matoro, had a script, was like, hey, you guys read this script, and, you know, do you like it? And I was like, no, I don't. And he was like, what? And I was like, if I'm going to direct this, you got to change the story. You got to change the story. Because I was like, it was written back in the 80s. And even though, like, I'm fine to make an 80s film on purpose.
Yeah.
However, knowing what I know from being an actress, because it was all based in like a strip club and, you know, drugs and cops. And I was like, nah.
Yeah.
I was like, I won't direct something like that, because I'm not going to put actresses through that, because I know what it's like. That's fine if certain actresses want to do that, that's great. But I'm not going to direct that.
You're not going to create that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Because
so we ended up
so many movies in the 80s were like that, especially with horror movies.
Exactly. They were all like that. Pretty much.
Yeah.
They were all like that. So
yeah.
I just was like, so I ended up rewriting it. And, you know, with the help of, like, you know, I sat with it. For my strength isn't in coming up with major storylines.
Thanks, Pop.
I can take something and kind of redo it a little bit.
Right. It's really redesigning the room.
Redesigning the room, right? But if somebody comes in and goes, hey, I'm going to redesign the room, what do you think about it? Then I'm like, oh, yeah, I like that. Right. And let's add a little of this. So when I said I didn't like it, because my ex-husband was like, well, I like it. And it's a really good story. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. It's got to be something different, right? So
yeah,
he sat with it for a couple of days. And part of his brilliance was like coming up with a new idea. So he was like, well, what if we did this? What if we turned it into like a roadhouse as opposed to a strip club? And it's more of like the roadhouse vibe, so that in the story, because it involved girls getting trafficked, it involved, you know, this underground drug, it involved all of these things. I was like, ooh, so if it's a roadhouse, the girls aren't taking off their clothes, but these girls are like stuck in this position because it's a truck stop and it's a road stop. It's like, it could be anybody doing this.
Yep.
So then I was like, okay, now I'm on board. So I ended up rewriting it in that theme and went, that now I'm down with that. And then when I sent it back to Darren, I was like, so what do you think? And he's like, oh, I love it. Oh my God. So that's still kind of on the table because I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then we, you know, and then my husband at the time was just like, started coming up with like, because, okay, so the title's called Instruments of Justice. It's about 4 mature police officers who go undercover as a bad 80s rock band to try to bust a drug and sex trafficking ring. So you can imagine, like Darren McBee, 4 guys like that, undercover, trying to be cool as this bad rock band. And so then my ex-husband just started coming up with all these ideas because, oh, it's Instruments of Justice is the first one. And then, oh, Wrestlers for Justice. And, oh, and Cowboys for Justice and this and that. And I'm like, oh my God, this wasn't supposed to be a series, but.
Right. If we're going to do it.
Like, hey. And then we just came up with like 9 different storylines. And I was like, even if we do a limited run series for 1 season of Instruments of Justice, there's 9 Instruments of Justice themes.
Right.
I'm like, okay. So we're still kind of in the process of working on getting some finance for that so that we can shoot that. But I'm circling back to the directing part. When we went to shoot the pilot, or we went to shoot the trailer last year, a friend of mine was supposed to get the camera and he was going to shoot it for us. I called him the week before, or well, actually 3 days before, and was like, hey, we're going to be there in 3 days to shoot. You know, I just wanted to give you the information. And he goes, oh, I got called out of town on a job.
Oh, come on.
I was like, oh my God. I was like, I've got all my actors coming in to shoot this thing, and I've got a location and I've got everything, but now I don't have a camera operator or a camera.
My gosh. And
I was like, ooh, what am I going to do? So I'm calling all of my friends that I know that have cameras, and they're like, hey, sorry, I can't get there. Oh, hey,
the worst.
Send a message to one of my girlfriends, and she's like, girl, just go rent a camera and shoot it yourself. You know how to do it. And I was like, I don't know if I know how to do it like that. And she's like, oh, trust me, you'll
figure it out.
You'll figure it out. So then I called another buddy of mine who's a director and shoots all his own stuff. And Michael Worth, who's this big martial artist, directs a bunch of different stuff. I was like, Michael, I don't know what to do. And he goes, okay, see if there's a camera house there. Get this, get that, and get that. Told me the camera to get. He told me the body to get. Told me the lenses to get. And he told me everything as the accessories of what I would need in order to shoot it myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I went to a camera house, rented everything, picked it all up, went to set, and just started shooting. And I was like, cool. And now I'm like, okay, now I just got to edit it together and do all of that, and tried to put it together and it was too slow. And now I'm like, oh, I got to do something else. But I found that John Carpenter was right. He was like, you know enough. Just do it. And I was like, thanks, John.
Right.
Thanks, buddy.
That's much better. Like, and I never thought I would say this, but that's a much better voice in your head than Obi-Wan Kenobi. It really is. So,
right.
Yeah.
Kudos.
Yeah. That living voice. It's not that hard, Marjeen. So then when I'm trying to figure out apertures and this and that, and I'm going, I don't know what button to push. It's not that hard, Marjeen. Yeah. I don't know which one is going to be the white balance. I don't know.
And that's the bottom line, because John Carpenter said so.
Yeah. Yes, Gary. Exactly. Encouragement from people.
Gary says
really empowering. It was totally empowering.
Yep.
Yes, Gary, it was. Yep. Without a doubt. So now
with the directing and stuff, do you plan to do more directing?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've got to get back to creating more on that series so that I've got a few episodes that are done. And then I've got another thing that I kind of put on the back burner, but I'm like, you know what? I should really get in there. And then when I met Lori Calcaterra, when I was down at the
show,
at Cowtown, when I read her Path of the Pale Rider, I was like, girl, we should just do some shorts on this. Let's do a trailer. I'll direct it. And she's like, what? And I'm like, heck yeah. Anyway, so for anyone listening, if you've got a trailer or something that you have money to shoot, I'm your girl. I'm your director. I got you. I got your back. I got your back.
She kind of knows what she's doing. Like, she got the receipts. So,
yeah.
And yes, Pops, then that led me here to you guys. So grateful. I've been having such a blast. Yeah.
This was a good one to jump back on,
That's
Ronnie.
awesome.
Like, this has been fun.
Right. Well, when I seen her on one of Pop's shows, I'm like, I gotta get her on the show, just because it's one of those things that, you know, I do comics and stuff like that, but in college and high school, I was, you know, big into musical theater, and I just love the art of acting, the love of voice acting, and actors like you, it's one of those things, like, you've seen them in so many movies that you don't remember their name, but you know where they're from.
Right.
And you know, when I saw more, it's like, oh, I know who she is, especially with like BeastMaster, because like I said, I watched that show a lot growing up, and it was just a really great show. And your character, and you did really well with that character. Like, I love to see that villain become the good guy. You know, the storyline there, like with wrestling, you have the heel becoming the face, or the enemy coming like the good guy. So yeah, it was a really. So with that on the show.
Say that again. You cut out.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, hear me?
Yep.
I think I froze.
You went frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. On the show.
I'm the one that
should
like
be going frozen. The fighting with the weapons.
Yeah, he's roboting. You're roboting, Ronnie.
Yeah. So I got a question. Oh, wait, there he goes. He's back.
He's back. Are you back?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So how much training did you have to do for the BeastMaster show? Because I know you had to like do some fighting with weapons and stuff like that. Was that a lot of tedious work?
So I had already been training for, okay, so that was 99, 2000, 2001. So I had already trained martial arts for 10 years prior to that. But on set, you know, it's like I would box. I would go to the gym to keep in shape. I would go to box because it was one of because I didn't have really a whole lot of time to go to like a structured class for martial arts. You know, I got a fair bit of stuff with the guys on set and things like that. But I just went to the boxing gym. I found a boxing gym and I just went and just like
just fit in what you could fit in. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I was like, hey, I got to stay in shape. So I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to box.
Yeah.
I love boxing.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is my audio better? I turned off my camera to see if that worked.
Yeah, it is better.
Yeah, you sound better.
Awesome. Gotta love technology. Sometimes it wants to work when it wants to.
Exactly. It's going to work when it wants to.
Right. So you said you've done some writing, you've done directing. Like out of the directing and writing, what do you think gives you the best pleasure? Directing. Gotcha.
Hands down. Hands down. Yeah.
The things you learned streaming for 3 years. Yeah.
I know, right?
So, you're not a big fan of horror movies, but like out of the classic slashers, Freddy, Jason, stuff like that, growing up, who really made an impact, like seeing them on the big screen or seeing them like on TV? Were like you drawn to any of those characters?
Not really. I mean, I was more into the vampire stuff. Anything that was like when Interview with a Vampire came out, like that kind of stuff. I was like, yeah, I'm cool with the vampire stuff. I mean,
yeah.
Now that I know what it's really about, but not really. But the vampires was more my style than the other
horror, like the
Yep. I didn't like the slasher stuff at all. I mean, I didn't like when that movie, which one was it? The movie Scream came out. I was like, yeah, no.
Were you a fan of Lost Boys?
Yes. Love Lost Boys.
Yeah, I love Lost Boys. It's one of those movies that me and my family could quote the whole movie because we watched it so many times as a kid and around Halloween time.
Yes.
It's
love the Lost Boys.
It's a story. You know what I mean? Like that's one of those movies. Like if you don't like horror, you can still enjoy this movie because it's Stephen King. I mean, that's another pillar, So
and it was so fun. I mean, it was just like, these lost boys on the on the boardwalk, and
it was the 80s. It was the kids at the mall that hung out in the arcade. You know what I mean? Like, but in the coolest way possible.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just like got the funniest line at the very end, when old what was his name? The older guy,
Grandpa.
Grandpa. Yeah, when Grandpa's like, I never liked the vampires here, I think that kind of stuff.
He always knew,
Wilford Brimley.
Yeah.
Wilford Brimley. Yeah.
And the thing is,
so great.
They made a comic series based off of it, so you found out how the grandfather knew about the vampires in the comic book series.
Thank you, Kathleen.
You great in Blade.
Story about that. I did audition for Blade. I did.
That's my sister.
Hi, sister. I didn't get it. I auditioned for it, but I didn't get it.
Oh yeah, did you audition for the movie or the television show?
For the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't get it. I was taller than Wesley, so he didn't like that.
He didn't like that too much.
They kind of frown on that, those guys,
But
he was always super nice to me. He was always really nice.
Yeah.
So.
What was the #1 movie that you hated that you didn't get the role for?
X-Men.
Oh, what character you were auditioned for?
Storm.
Oh
my gosh.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
gotcha.
I was. Whew. Yeah. That was the one that really. Ugh. That one hurt.
Are you a big comic book fan?
I'm not a huge comic book fan, even though I did, you know, that was our entertainment back in the day. You know, I'm a 60s baby. So my brother and I would read DC comics when we were kids.
Yeah, DC fan here.
Oh, thanks, Pops. Yeah. Thanks. I think so too. But we were, you know, we were Batman and Robin fans.
Yeah.
So it was all Caped Crusaders when we were growing up. And so huge fan of those. Huge fan of the Batman, the Robin, the Wonder Woman, all of that. And then here comes this whole Marvel universe. And I was like, wait, whoa, the X-Men and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is a whole new world. Not really into the comic books, but like the universe.
I like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was peak 90s. Like it was the next step from the Trapper Keeper was the Jim Lee X-Men. Like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter's big into comic books. Like she'll watch something and be like, ugh, that is not how it is in the comic book. And I can't believe they did that. And I'm like, huh? She's like, Mom, you have to read the comic book. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. But yeah, so she's, you know, and if she, you know, anytime, you know, the last few conventions we've gone to, she'll go, Mom, I gotta have this comic book. Look at the cover. Look at the Loki. And I'm like, all right, honey.
Yeah.
Now with conventions, do you ever plan to do any?
Yeah, I do. I'm supposed to go back to the Arlington Comic Fest here in April. And I met a author, a writer, actor, you know, done a lot of things last year when I was in Oklahoma City in Tulcon. So he's going to start. I was like, hey, you want to, he goes, I kind of help other people get conventions. Do you want me to help get your, I was like, yes, just start hitting people up.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah. Cause I hadn't done one for a long time. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot how, like, for me, I'm best interacting in person with people. I mean, I spent 16 years on stage doing transformational trainings. I like being in the room with people. I like interacting with people. I like doing panels. I like doing interviews. I like both sides of that process. So I'm like, hey, oh, you got a panel? Great. I'll be on the panel. Do you need someone to moderate the panel? Great, because I can do that too.
I'll do that too.
Because I love
awesome.
that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, have a plan to do as many as possible. And then, you know, of course, once the projects get going and get moving and shaking and grooving, then I'll have more new current stuff to bring to the table. And just being around all of you comic book artists is like really kind of gone, oh, that's a whole world that I didn't pay attention to, or I wasn't paying attention to, or I haven't, that some of my stuff can actually translate to.
Yeah, we're all cousins. Like creators are all cousins.
Yeah,
like directors and writers.
Family.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a great family because we
all love
we all get to learn something different from each other, and something that a director does can enhance what I do as a writer, or what I might try to pull off in a panel might be something that I saw in a movie that a director put in. But now I'm trapping that medium onto something completely different. Like I'm putting it on a 2-dimensional field. And it's, I don't know. It's just a fun community to be a part of, to learn. Cause you know, it's very different learning formulaic versus like learning creatively and organic. And we all teach each other different things because we all arrive different ways. Yeah.
So that's a whole new world for me.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, you know, we all appreciate the art of storytelling.
Yeah.
And even before you get into the set of the movies, we've had Zoe Bones on here. That's a storyboard artist. And, you know, a lot of movies go through storyboard first, and it's almost set up like in a comic book style, just to give you that idea of how something should look visually before you go to the actual shooting.
Yeah, exactly. I've got one of my really, really dear friends who is a previs artist, and I met him through my brother when my brother was working animation on Space Jam. And he's this black guy from the UK and has this great mind for writing sci-fi and has got these really great time travel scripts. And he does previs on, you know, he does previs on like Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm like, I forget that, like, that's his whole world. Like, he can draw, you know, frames. Like, that's his job. Like, you know, I'm just going to draw a couple frames, you know, and yeah, it's going to be in Spider-Man. I'm like, oh,
no big deal, right?
And like to him, he's like, yeah, it's my day job, you know, but I really, you know, want to direct, you know, because I got my scripts that I've written that are really cool that I need to direct. And I'm like, oh, right. There's that. It's like, it just kind of blows my mind. And then I get like, oh yeah, create these characters. You could actually create your own character, Marjeen, like based on you. I'm like, oh, right. Oh, yeah, I could do that and create a comic book. I'm like, duh.
Yeah, comics might be like one of the most unique but fastest growing ways to build a fan base. Like to tell a story, to put a book out, like you really get to connect with the character before you take it to another stage, whether that be a video game or a movie or what have you, something to connect people to what you're doing. And something that they can hold or read is a very big step.
So it's my year of being educated by all of you, which is super cool. I'm like, this is really great. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to have you on. Awesome. This has been a fun chat.
Oh yeah, definitely a fun treat.
Yeah, and I like it because it's like I can't even like draw stick figures. You know, so I'm like, I really admire and honor those of you who have that gift because I'm like, no, definitely not my gift. I want it to look like this, but I can't draw you a picture of that.
Right.
Yeah. Gotcha.
You know,
that's awesome.
I could probably give you some words, but I couldn't give you a picture.
But you know, you could describe the picture. You could build. You could say, "Here's what will make the picture look good." That's a big chunk of being there. Like from what I'm learning. So
you know, with comics, you don't have to be an artist. You could be the writer.
Yeah. So
same thing with movies. If you don't love to act, you could just do the directing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because it's like people now are like, hey, ooh, I like that, Pops. They're like, hey, you know, are you pursuing acting? And I'm like, nah, not really anymore. Because it's not that I don't like being in front of the camera, because I definitely do. However, nowadays I'm like, I don't want to have to remember dialogue. I don't want to have to get in costume. I don't want to have to do any of that. I'm like, I'd rather tell you what to do.
You ever plan to do, I mean, now it's such a big popular thing where more people are trying to do voice acting. Do you ever think about doing that?
Yes, that is something that for me, I hands down would do. I mean, and I did. I told the guys on the last show that I did, if you guys have something that you need voiced, let me know. Let me know. And I'll voice it.
Awesome.
So, yeah, because I do enjoy that. You know, it's like I've done a bit of it just for, friends or whatever, just to put stuff out there. And, you know, it's like I don't have Like my brother has this amazing like DJ voice. And even though I don't have like his DJ voice, you know, he's a musician, he's a drummer, and he's like usually the best singer in every band that he's in, and he sits behind the drums, you know. And I'm like, everybody in my family on my dad's side is like, they sing, and my mom's side, like they play instruments. And I'm like, I'm like, yeah, I can sing a little, but I'm an actor.
Right.
And I will, you know, voice a character for you as opposed to reading, you know, some weather or news or something like that.
Because I mean, with voice acting, so many people are like, oh, I could get into voice acting because I could do character voices. But, you know, if you want to get into that, you have to go to acting classes first.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you could do the voice all you want, but you have to make sure that voice, what they sound like depressed, what they sound like, you know, excited, terrified, you know.
Totally.
It's a whole different dimension. Yeah. Things that you wouldn't think about because you can't convey it with your face.
Right.
And you can't rely on your job to be finished by the animator. You have to see it through. You know, so, you know, a writer can't rely on an artist to convey exactly if there's an important message. An artist can't rely on a writer to do the same thing. It takes everybody doing 100% at what they do. And I think that voice acting kind of ties a lot of that like unseen skill together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's even more interesting is my acting coach, who just passed away this last summer.
Sorry to hear that.
I was with him. Yeah, I was with him. I trained with this guy for Rick Walters, amazing coach. And when I first started training with him was early, like it was the early 90s, like 89, 90. I started training with him and trained with him consistently for like 12 years. And one of the things he always said was never rely on another actor to give you what you need.
Your job is to nail it.
Your job is to just nail it, right? Yep. And one of the best compliments I ever got was, one was from John Carpenter, and another was from the editor on Crusade. John Carpenter said to me during one of the in-between takes once, he was like, you know, I see you over here and you're like, you got something going on, like even though you're not on camera. And I said, yeah, because you might decide to turn the camera and I don't want to be over here like picking my nose. Like, that's not going to help you. Like, for real. And he was like, yeah, I like that. I mean, and that's just from my training with Rick. He's like, hey, don't, you know, you're always give your best. If you're off camera, you're going to give, you know, don't expect it from them, but you give them everything you can.
Yep.
Even if you're not on camera.
Yep.
And a lot of acting coaches don't train that way. It's like, hey, your camera's on you. Don't worry. I mean, there was a joke on Crusade. It was Gary Cole was so funny on Crusade. He'd always say, man, I do my best acting when I'm not on camera.
Yeah.
Because he's like when, you know, when somebody else is doing their dialogue and he's behind the scenes, you know, behind the camera, like off camera, he's like, I do my best acting there. So funny.
Awesome. Well, it's past an hour. Jason, got anything to ask before we wrap it up? It's been such a pleasure to have you on. It's been great.
Yeah, oh, it's been a blast, you guys. Thank you so much.
So I guess if I had one question to ask you, it would probably be, as far as acting and like having the experiences that you've had as an actor, do you feel like now being behind the camera is kind of like a show of gratitude to the stories that you've been a part of? Like, do you feel like it's a thank you to tell a great story after being a part of so many great stories? Or is that just two separate animals?
You know, I think that everything that I've experienced in front of the camera gives me an advantage behind the camera.
Sure.
Because, you know, I've had to take direction and, hey, do this. And this is what we're looking for. And this is what I need in order to make the story work. So to me, it feels like just the next level of rounding out my toolbox, per se, in the film industry, of going from in front of the camera to behind the camera and being able to have a different connection with talent, with actors, than had I not had that experience. Yeah.
Awesome.
So it definitely, it definitely feels really important that I've had that experience.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Storytelling is definitely it's really all we have at the end of it all. It's why I've gotten to learn so much about myself. It's why I've been able to express so much about myself. And so it's storytelling is like facts are facts, and facts are important, but it's people being able to express it in their way that kind of sparks the next person.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
It's like,
either be a movie or someone picking up a comic.
Yeah.
Right.
If it wasn't, you know, like Beekman's World made science cool. Bill Nye made science cool.
Right.
So, you know, all these things existed, but these are the people that kind of like made it spark with you. So I just want to do that same thing with my stories, you know, and I think that's kind of what we all, if we have a story to tell, I think that's kind of what we all want.
Tell it.
So, no, thank you so much for coming on. It's always good to talk to people making stories in a different way than we are. Because, like I said, we're all cousins. Like, we're all trying to do the same thing. So, thank you so much for coming on. This was a very good conversation.
You guys so much. This was amazing. It was so much fun.
Thank you. Pop was asking about dinosaurs because you were in Jurassic Lost World, weren't you?
The Lost World Jurassic. Yes.
Nice.
You know, it's so funny because when I was on the show with them and they talked about it before, everybody, like if I do a convention or do something, everybody wants to talk about, oh my God, you were in Jurassic Park, The Lost World. And I'm like, okay, this is what really happened. There was one particular scene where they wanted stunt actors to be running down the street away from the dinosaurs. For whatever reason, they wanted stunt actors. Okay, cool. So I literally went in to audition to be a screamer running away from the dinosaur because for whatever reason, like had to be a stunt person, had to be a stunt actor. I don't question it. Like, hey, cool. And it was like this big deal, like, and Steven Spielberg himself is going to choose
the stunt runners
because
awesome.
He wants to make sure that I was like, God, is it that important? Like,
shouldn't it be more about the dinosaurs?
Like, it's about the dinosaurs and not about the screaming people, but okay, I guess, you know. So I go in and I get the part of screamer, and they don't trust amateurs to run. So there's got to be some people to run and scream because, you know, someone could run and fall down and scream and fall down. But if you're running and screaming, there might be a greater chance that you could fall down.
Right. Yes.
In the wake of running from dinosaurs.
Absolutely.
So I get this, you know, screamer part, and I'm in the makeup trailer, getting my makeup done because I'm hired as a stunt actor person doing this screaming. So they're like, oh, we got to do her makeup, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I'm in there getting my makeup done. And like Jeff Goldblum sitting in the next chair. And
that's
I'm
awesome.
Like, what do you say? Like, hey, hi, how's it going? Don't want to be creeper weird, you know?
Right.
Be like fangirling, like, ooh, you were so great.
Yeah, who would have fangirl over Jeff Bean right there?
Right? like, ooh, just be cool. Like, just be cool. Like, you know, he's an actor, you're an actor. Yeah, he's a big star and you're a screamer, but just be cool. My God. So I get ready and then I go to set and I'm standing on set, just like kind of waiting for my screaming part. And Steven Spielberg's plotting, you know, he's running like where he wants everything to be. And they've got the little stick dinosaur that we're going to be running from. And he's like, oh, and this one right here, make sure we get the pretty girl in there. I'm like, oh my God. Don't fall down while you're screaming.
Right.
It's really pretty, but super uncoordinated. God, who hired her?
Awesome.
So that was my big thing in Jurassic Park: The Lost World. I was a screamer. Cool. I don't even think in the final cut. I mean, it was great because they're like, hey, everybody come to the opening up at Universal Studios, The Lost World. And I was like, I don't even think I saw myself in there at all because of course, you know, it's like not that important that you don't end up on the cutting room floor. So it was a very quick scene. And who has time to be, make sure you get that one in there, you know, in the cut.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a credit. Screamer.
There you go. Yeah. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So that's my running from dinosaur story. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. And if you have anything ever to promote, you're more welcome to come back.
Awesome. Thank you.
Or
even if we don't have anything to promote, just come and hang out one day.
Sometimes we love to talk about horror movies and anything related to that. So if you have a topic for us to talk to, you're more than welcome. You know, it's always great to have people to come on.
Yeah, and I'll send my horror friends your way. I'm like, who do I know?
Oh, please do.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I'll just send them to you guys. Yeah.
So what do you have? Let the audience know what you got going on right now so they could follow you or look out for any projects you have.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
You have a podcast or some books out there you wrote?
I have a book that I wrote that's nonfiction. It's funny enough, I have it right here actually, and this is my women's book, The Power of the Goddess. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Awesome.
So I've got this book that I wrote, The Power of the Goddess: A Woman's Guide to Cultivating, Awakening, Cultivating, and Sustaining Her Power. So I wrote that, and that's on Amazon. I've got a couple of projects that I'm working on this year. So I've got to get back to working on Instruments of Justice, and I've got another dragon story that has been way back in the back of the bus going, hey, hello, it's time.
It's like literally right behind you now.
Literally right behind me going, hey, it's time to dust this off and get this out of here and do that. And, you know, I'm just kind of seeing where things take me. Yeah, definitely grow this channel for sure. Yeah. And so doing some conventions, and like I said, just need to kind of create characters that are based off of me and what I like, and try to get that stuff out there and create a story of my own. And I always had this thing, like when I was younger, I loved the covers of heavy metal magazine.
Yeah.
That kind of art. And I was like, oh, I want someone to draw me like this, like the cover of a heavy metal magazine. I love this. you know, and it hasn't happened yet. Now I'm like, ooh, I'm almost, you know, I'm 58 and I don't know if I want that anymore, but yeah, I
Has
kind of
anybody
do.
reached you about pop figures? Because you have so many like pop figures out there. I'm surprised they didn't try to do anything with the BeastMaster show yet.
No, and nobody has. So I think a pop figure could be cool.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All
so right. Yeah, I definitely have, my eyes have been opened and awakened to more of the character and the merchandising and all of that kind of stuff since, you know, popping into these conventions, and definitely from talking to Lori for sure. Like, hey,
yeah, she nailed the product placement with the first Path of the Pale Rider run. Like that was just fantastic.
Yeah, so
I mean,
thank you everybody for
with
showing
the first
up.
one and the second one, she has her own pop vinyl.
Yeah,
really awesome.
So it's really super cool. So I mean, and they're all things that I like. I like the merchandising aspect of everything. So, you know, that was one of the bummers of Mortal Kombat. We all had merchandising agreements, but then they never made any merchandise.
Oh, that's
I was like,
that's too
I was
bad.
supposed to have a Sheeva character and they never made it. So
it would have killed too.
Yeah.
That's one they should let Todd McFarlane just run wild with. Like,
right.
I know he did some, but I would love to see like just sink his teeth into like these super deluxe.
Yep.
Yeah, Pops has an awesome. The brew is awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
I have a lot of people lined up, but we got to get Pops on the show because he's doing a lot of great stuff for the community.
He is. He's doing great stuff, and yeah, he's actually we talked about doing something as well. So since I love that action stuff, you guys got the horror stuff going on. I'm like, hey, let's do the B movie channel, B movie actions.
Right.
I love it.
Follow my friends.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know a bunch of those guys. So
well, thank you everyone for being in the chat.
Thanks,
and everyone watching afterwards. We appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great weekend and you all have a great night. Peace.
Have a great night. Peace.